Hi everyone, Jennifer here. I'm going to show you a scenic design exercise. So obviously with set decoration, you really need to know a little bit or a lot about scenic design. So how would I take a room like this and change it to one like this? Okay, this is very simple. But as you can see, I could build an entirely different environment here just by using Photoshop. Okay, so the way I'm going to show you is, let's get started here. First, I'm going to go back to this piece here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the new floor that I put down, as you can see here, okay, does not cover up this area here, because you can see this is lower than the back. So I have to actually cut out an area so that the floor will look the way I want it to look. So if I go back to here, the first thing I need to do is use the pen tool. Now you may recall that the shape tool here was used to make different shapes. Okay, we made a chicken with this shape tool, and just to move this over so you can see, right here I used the custom shape tool and I made a chicken that was just a preset in Photoshop. However, if you want to do any kind of shape at all, you can use the pen tool. The pen tool makes paths, but if you set it up to make shapes, okay, right here, you just go in the options bar and set it up to make shapes, then you are doing very well. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I'll just make an extra one, I'll get started for you. I'm going to just go down to this room layer. Is I'm going to choose a blue color like I did for the original one, use the pen tool, and the pen tool's amazing. It can do all kinds of great things. We're going to keep it relatively simple here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I may zoom out just so you can see better. And I'm going to click and drag right at the very, you want to be very careful when you do this, okay? Right here, exactly at this point. And I get what's called a vertex, okay? And then I'm going to click and drag here. Now, if I wanted the vertex to have curves like that, you see the curves? I click and drag, and then I get these Bezier handles, these handle things that can make curves, which is great, okay? This is, by the way, also a very precise way. You see that heart up there? This is a great way to select anything that you want to select. And cut it out, and you can turn it into a path. Okay, you can see how nicely that heart was made up there. But in this case, I don't want to click and drag. Okay, so I'm going to delete, Command Z actually. I'm just going to click, and then I will get very nice vertical and horizontal lines, or even diagonal lines. Okay, so that I'm not worrying about curves. So then I come on over here and click again. And you can use guides to help you too if you'd like, okay? Now you'll notice it's starting to make a blue shape that's the wrong shape, but don't worry, this is going to work out fine once I close it. See that? Okay, so maybe I'll move that vertex over by just hitting the left arrow. Click over here. And if that's a little crooked, I can adjust it. And I can actually adjust both of these by choosing my direct selection tool. So I can click off of here and then click this one, shift click this one and move them over. Then go back to my pen tool and just click that last vertex that I made to go back to my shape that I want to make of the floor. Okay, and I'm going to just make that smaller so you can see it better, so you can see the whole thing. And now I just click here, and you can see it's starting to make the shape the way I want it now. Here, 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 and there. Okay, and then I need to close it. So you want to finish by clicking on the very first vertex that you created. And when you do that, you'll see that there's a little circle by the pen tool, which just means you're closing the path. There you go. So as you can see, I've made a shape one, just like this one that I'm calling color fill. And by the way, I could change this to color fill. I just called the other one color fill. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now, let's just put color right there for a second. So that's how you do it. That's how you make the first part of this assignment. Which, don't worry, we're probably not going to have to do it unless you do it for extra credit, because it's a little bit complicated. I just want you to watch the video so you can see it, and then in your own leisure time or for extra credit, you can try this. Okay, I'm going to throw this one in the trash since I already made this nice one here, which looks like this, because it is now part of, it's being used to clip all of these other nice textures here. Okay, but don't worry about that. You know how to do this already. I've taught you before, but let's not worry about it at the moment. Now this is set up to be linear burn as well. I'm going to make it normal just so you can see that this is exactly what I just made a moment ago. There you go. See that? Okay, and now just so you know, in the paths tool, it becomes a path. And as you can see, it says color fill one shape path. So that's what this is, okay? The next thing you're going to want to do is grab a seamless texture. Now you can actually make seamless textures from scratch, but that would be another lesson. But let's just go ahead and say that we want a seamless texture from the internet. And here are, if you just do a search for seamless textures, you get all kinds of cool seamless textures. Once again, you can make these on your own, okay? But that is another lesson. All right, we're gonna go ahead and go with this one, okay? And this is a pretty good one. It's a pretty good size. So I am going to actually take this and save this image, okay? And I'll just put it here, and I'll call this tile. Let's see, we'll call this floor tile seamless texture 2, because I already made one. Okay, and it's a JPEG, and I'm going to save it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go to the Finder, and I'm going to open it with Photoshop. So I can click here, Control, or right click on a PC, open with Photoshop 2021, and there it is. Okay, now if this is a true seamless texture, it's going to work really nicely. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go Edit, Define Pattern. Okay, and we'll call this Floor Tile Seamless Texture 2. We can take off the word JPEG and click on OK. Now this should be saved as a pattern in Photoshop. Okay, and remember, I just took this from the internet and I saved it into my Finder. Then I opened it with Photoshop and I used, once again, Define Pattern. Okay, and it automatically makes that nice pattern for me. And you'll see where this is going to come up. All right, let's go back to this room tutorial. Now what I'm going to do is let's just make another layer. Okay, and I can put this layer, actually, you know what, let me, just so you can see this better, I'm going to just make it right here. I'm just going to hit Shift Command N. That will allow me to name a new layer. So I'm going to call this Tile 2. Okay, so it's not part of the clipping mask or anything yet. Tile 2, and I'm going to put it right above here. Okay, it is now empty. The next step is I'm going to fill it with a color, and I can choose any color I want. This doesn't matter. It won't end up being this color at all. So this color will sort of be like a label for it. Okay, so let's use like a bright green. Okay, and now I'm going to use my shape tool, the rectangle tool. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and draw a big rectangle right there. Okay. All right, so now I have a rectangle shape there. And now you get to learn a little bit about smart objects, which I had told you to, like, you don't want smart objects. Now you guys are getting advanced enough to where you're going to learn about how they work. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, this is already a shape because it has this little shape icon in here. But what I'm going to do is I am going to go to, let's see, Layer, Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. And now it's a smart object. Watch what you can do with a smart object. By the way, don't forget to save. I'm just going to save that, roomtutorial.psd. And now if I double click on this little icon, this means it's a smart object. It opens up as a PSB. A PSB, when you have smart objects, is an editable whole document, like nested file that is editable within Photoshop. So this, even though this texture is not editable here, I can't really edit this. I can edit it, and let me just close these things here. I can open it up, double click on it, and here it is editable, okay, which is really cool. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm just going to double click on it, and I am going to create a pattern overlay. You'll see here's the pattern that I had created before. This is just a different pattern. And I'm going to click down here, and you'll notice that pattern that I made a few minutes ago is listed here as a pattern. And I should probably organize this better, but there it is listed as a pattern. Okay, so now all I have to do is just click on OK. And there you go. So just that little square thing, and let's go back to the internet so you can see it, is now a pattern with many different squares, okay, which is really nice. And it's called Tile 2. Now, it's important when you're in this layer, and I could make a whole bunch of layers and turn them on and off if I wanted, which I've done with some of the other layers that you'll see in Photoshop, but I could try a bunch of different patterns down here. This smart object inside of its own self is a PSB, which means Photoshop Big, which just is the format for smart objects and for large Photoshop files. This is very, very editable. And as you can see, there's no smart object in this. This is just a shape layer that has a pattern overlay in it. Okay. Make sure that when you're in the smart object, okay, you save, Command S. So now this is saved. I go back to the room tutorial, and you'll notice that now this new layer is a pattern. The smart object is a pattern, okay? And what I'm going to do now is I am going to clip it to this color fill 1, but I also have to transform it. So I'm going to just right click, and I'm going to create a clipping mask. And as you can see, the blue, okay, once it is clipped by this layer that I made using the pen tool, is clipping this off, okay? And it's revealing it only where the blue area is. All right, so now obviously I have to deal with the perspective here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform it, Command T. I'm going to hold down Shift. In this case, when you're dealing with this layer here, which is a smart object, I have to hold down Shift, okay, to make it change its shape. Otherwise, it's just going to get smaller and stay the same aspect ratio. All right, so there you go. I've brought it all the way down. And now I need to work with the perspective. So watch how this works. It's really cool. In the transform tool, I'm going to use perspective, okay? And now all I have to do is drag this section in to the edge of the wall. This is so cool. I love this. And drag this out so that this line follows this line, and everything will be perfect. Let's make this smaller so I can drag it out. So I use the perspective within the transform, within the Command T transform tool. And that should be pretty good. And then I hit return. And there you have it. Now, I didn't do the most perfect job because I am just trying to show you this tutorial quickly. But as you can see, now I have created a new floor. Now, if I want it to have a little bit of that, all the sheen, okay, that I showed you before, I go to the color fill and I put it into linear burn, okay? And now this is looking really nice, but you can see that wooden texture underneath. So it's best to start with a floor that has no texture, that just has the sheen, but it's just a solid basic floor. And then you can, when you put new different types of textures on it, you can maintain that nice sheen from the reflections of windows and things like that. In this case, this floor looks really nice. And you know, you're seeing the wood texture, that was a seamless texture. And you're also getting a nice color from the linear burn here in the blue. Now, just to show you here, if I double click on this smart object, notice I've got a whole bunch of different choices within this one. And I can turn these on. So let's say, for example, I wanted to go with this texture instead, okay? Or I wanted to go with this texture here, okay? Or let's see, I've got this one down here, okay? Once I do that and I hit Command S, I'm inside the PSB of the smart object. I make sure I save it. When I go back to Room Tutorial, now I have that texture. So it's pretty cool. So I do highly recommend you try this. I'm going to go back to the light wood texture. So I'll go back. Just if you forget where you are, just double click. I'm back in here. I'm going to turn this one on. This was the nicest one. And save, Command S, go back to the Room Tutorial, and there it is. Now, you can also start putting furniture into your room, right? So what I did was I grabbed a chair, here it is, from the internet, just, you know, took a modern looking chair. And you already know how to knock out the background. I used the select and mask, but when I used select and mask this time, I allowed it to output a layer with a mask. So you may recall, just to show you really quickly here, let's do this really quickly. Let's say I do this selection here, object selection tool. I go here, okay, and I let it select, and then I go into select and mask, or select subject would be even better, but go into select and mask. And this is not good enough, but let's say it is. And I go ahead and I output to new layer with layer mask, which is usually what you'll get if you click on decontaminate colors, which I love to do. New layer with layer mask, okay? Click on OK. Now, the reason you would use a layer mask in this case is that when you have a layer mask, okay, so I'm going to click over here. You'll notice this is highlighted. I can do things with the chair. When I click over here, okay, this mask is highlighted. And when a mask is highlighted, your paintbrush becomes automatically white and black. And let me show you what happens. If I zoom in, if I paint with black, I erase from the mask. And you'll notice that it's showing it's erasing from the mask. Command Z. If I paint with white, it adds to the mask. So in this case, the background is white, but it adds. So if I wanted to really perfect a selection, like if I were dealing with a fashion magazine, layer masks are great, okay? Now, once again, if I want to erase, black erases, and I could erase part of something if I didn't like it. Okay, so that's the good thing about layer masks. I haven't shown them to you before because they can be a little complicated. And they can cause problems when you try to use the liquify tool. This layer mask is going to cause problems. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one because I already have this one here. Okay, and what I did here was I took this one and I, once again, transformed it. And I could try perspective on this one, okay? Or I could just distort it. In this case, I'm going to show you distort. Distort allows you to just take one side and kind of, you know, not using perspective because maybe you want to be a little bit more subtle, okay? So I'm using distort to just distort it slightly. hit return, and you'll notice the layer mask works nicely with it. It didn't used to. I think in very old versions it didn't work. But in this case, it is working. But once again, Liquify does not work with this, okay? All right. So then I also created a little shadow by using my marquee tool, but giving it a feather of 10 pixels. Feathering will make your edges softer. So just to show you, let's say I'll just go over here. I'm going to make a new layer just to show you how I did this. And I selected right like that. Okay. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and fill it. Edit fill with foreground color. And there it is. And then what I can do is I can turn down the opacity. Make it very subtle. Okay, so chair shadow, I'll use this layer 1 as my chair shadow. I brought its opacity down to 50. I can now Command D, hit V as in Victor. So Command D deselects, and V as in Victor changes me to the Move tool. And there you go. So there you have it. That is how to begin to transform a room in Photoshop and do amazing things with Scenic Design. Enjoy and try this, in your own time. Don't worry about having to do this perfectly right now, but please do try it. It's a great exercise.